Sanjay Rao, step away from the order sheets.
Of course, let's not alarm the staff. I'll walk you through anything you need.
The center billed ingesters for new supplies it did not use.
To his staff, Sanjay Rao was the director keeping this dialysis center running. To federal investigators, he was the man who gambled his patients' lives for the cost of disposable tubing. His arrest is playing out right now.
These numbers are easy to misread if you don't know clinic
The
operations.
savings went back to you while patients carried the risk.
Let me explain the workflow before this becomes a headline. Nobody here deserves that kind of damage.
Sanjay Vikram Rao would not get the chance to explain. Within 48 hours, federal agents from the FBI's Houston field office, investigators from the Texas Attorney General's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, and inspectors from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services would descend on the Brazos Bend Dialysis Center on Highway 6 in Sugar Land, Texas. They would seize supply order logs, billing records dating back 3 years, the contents of his office, and 11 boxes of used dialyzers pulled from a locked storage room he alone had the key to. 19 confirmed bloodstream infections, 240 patients exposed, a federal grand jury already convened. Quick question before we continue. How many places in your life are you forced to trust because you simply have no other choice? Think about it for a second. Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. This channel covers the cases mainstream media buries. We do this every single week. Sanjay Vikram Rao was born in Hyderabad, India in 1977. His father, Vikram Rao, worked as an accountant for a state-run bank. His mother, Lalita, taught mathematics at a girls' school in the Banjara Hills neighborhood. In the summer of 1984, when Sanjay was 7 years old, the family boarded a Pan Am flight from Mumbai to New York, connecting on to Houston, Texas, where his father had accepted a bookkeeping position at a small oil services firm in the energy corridor. The family settled in Leaf, a working-class neighborhood on the southwest side of the city, in a beige brick townhouse on Boone Road. Sanjay's earliest American memory was of the humidity, of stepping off the plane at Houston Intercontinental and feeling the air press against his skin like wet cloth. His mother enrolled him at Bush Elementary that August. He spoke serviceable English, learned from British-run schools in Hyderabad, but the Texas vowels confused him for months. He grew up quiet, studious. His father kept meticulous ledgers at the kitchen table every Sunday afternoon, tallying the household budget in a red spiral notebook, and Sanjay would sit across from him doing his homework, mimicking the same careful columns. Numbers made sense to him, people less so. He attended Elsick High School in Leaf, graduating in 1995 with a class rank of 18th out of 642. His guidance counselor, a woman named Delphine Whitaker, wrote in his file that he was reserved but exceptionally organized, with strong aptitude for administrative work. She recommended he pursue accounting. He enrolled at Houston Community College that fall, working nights at a Kroger on Bissonnet Street, stocking shelves for $6.75 an hour. 2 years later, he transferred to the University of Houston, majoring in business administration with a healthcare management concentration. He interned in the summer of 1998 at Memorial Hermann Southwest Hospital, working in the billing office, learning the peculiar language of CPT codes, HCPCS modifiers, and prior authorizations. His supervisor there, a woman named Marjorie Kettleman, noted that he was detail-oriented, worked well independently, and occasionally needed guidance on interpersonal escalations. She hired him full-time after graduation in 1999. He married Priya Chandrasekaran in the summer of 2003 in a 2-day Hindu ceremony held at the Sri Meenakshi Temple in Pearland. Priya was a pharmacist at a Walgreens on Beltway 8. Their first son, Rohan, was born in 2005. Their second son, Aditya, followed in 2008. By then, Sanjay had left Memorial Hermann and joined a large dialysis services chain as an assistant billing manager for their Southeast Texas region. He was promoted twice in 5 years. In 2011, he completed an executive MBA at Texas A&M's Mays Business School, driving to College Station every other weekend for 2 years, sleeping in a Motel 6 off Highway 6 to save money. In 2015, a private equity group called Meridian Renal Partners was assembling a portfolio of independent outpatient dialysis centers across the Gulf Coast. They needed an operations director for a new acquisition in Fort Bend County, the Brazos Bend Dialysis Center, a 24-chair facility on Highway 6 in Sugar Land, serving roughly 240 chronic kidney patients. The starting salary was $142,000, with a performance bonus tied to per-treatment margin. Sanjay Rao took the job. He was 38 years old. He had 2 children, a mortgage on a 4-bedroom house in the Riverstone subdivision, an aging Toyota Camry, and a father who had just been diagnosed with congestive heart failure. His performance review that first year described him as a natural cost optimizer, deeply attentive to supply chain efficiency, exhibiting strong leadership potential. The bonus that year came to $22,000. He would learn, over the next several years, that the margin on a dialysis treatment is thin, and that no one was checking the supply closet. Chronic hemodialysis is not a treatment. It is a life sentence with a machine. A patient whose kidneys have failed cannot filter waste from their own blood. They must sit in a reclining chair for 3.5 to 4 hours at a time, 3 days a week, every week for the rest of their lives, while a machine pulls their blood out through a needle in their arm, runs it through a filter, and returns it. Miss 2 sessions in a row, and the toxins climbing through your bloodstream will kill you. The Brazos Bend Dialysis Center ran 3 shifts a day, 6 days a week. First shift began at 4 in the morning. Third shift ended at 10 at night. 24 chairs, roughly 72 treatments per day, 432 per week. Medicare covered the majority of patients, because dialysis is one of the few conditions that qualifies a patient for federal insurance, regardless of age, and it reimbursed the center on a bundled payment basis, roughly $250 per treatment, with additional line items for specific supplies and medications. Each treatment required a specific set of disposable supplies. The dialyzer itself, a plastic cartridge roughly the size of a paperback book, containing thousands of hollow fibers through which the patient's blood would flow. Bloodlines, sterile plastic tubing that carried the blood from the patient to the dialyzer and back. Saline flushes, priming solutions, transducer protectors, arterial and venous needles. Every single item was labeled by the manufacturer as single-use only, single patient, single session, discard. The reason for the single-use designation was not marketing. Dialyzers and bloodlines could not be sterilized between patients to a standard that eliminated the risk of transmitting bloodborne pathogens or bacterial contamination. Hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV, Staph aureus, gram-negative bacteria. The fibers of a used dialyzer, invisible to the eye, harbored trace amounts of the previous patient's blood. Reuse across patients was not a gray area. It was prohibited by the manufacturer's instructions for use, by CMS's conditions for coverage for end-stage renal disease facilities, and by the Texas Health and Safety Code. The billing process was straightforward. For each treatment, the center submitted a claim to Medicare or the patient's private insurer, listing the treatment code, the supplies used, and any medications administered. The claim assumed, as regulation required, that every disposable supply on the invoice had been used once and discarded. No one at the insurance company ever visited the center. No one at Medicare walked the floor. The claims were paid on trust. The supply audits were paid on trust. The infection reports were self-reported on trust. Every part of the system rested on the assumption that the person running the center was doing what he said he was doing. Sanjay Rao ran the center. The scheme began, as far as investigators would later reconstruct, in the third quarter of 2020. The pandemic had disrupted global supply chains. Medical supply distributors were rationing dialysis consumables. Sanjay's regular vendor, a national distributor called Medline Renal, had put the Brazos Bend Center on a monthly quota system. At the same time, Meridian Renal Partners had cut the per-facility supply budget by 9%, citing pandemic-related revenue pressure, while raising the performance bonus threshold. The first documented instance, reconstructed from supply logs, occurred on the morning of August the 11th, 2020. That morning, first shift treatments began at 4 a.m., with only enough new dialyzers on hand for 2/3 of the day's scheduled patients. According to interviews the FBI later conducted with a former nurse manager, Sanjay came in personally at 5:30 that morning, went into the supply room, and returned with a rolling cart of dialyzers pulled from the used cartridge bin. He instructed the 2 technicians on duty to run them through the center's reprocessing machine, a device intended for single-patient reuse only, and to relabel them for assignment to different patients. The technicians, both new hires, both making $18 an hour, both terrified of losing their jobs, did what they were told. The center billed Medicare that day for 72 new dialyzers. It used 24. The difference on paper was approximately $1,800 in a single shift. The pattern that emerged over the following months was clinical in its precision. Sanjay maintained 2 sets of supply logs. The first, kept in a shared drive accessible to Meridian Corporate, reflected the numbers that appeared on billing claims. Full new supply usage per treatment, no reuse. The second, kept on a USB drive in the top drawer of his desk, recorded actual usage, which dialyzers had been reprocessed, how many times, for which patients. The reprocessing machine had been installed years earlier for legitimate single-patient reuse, permitted under CMS rules with strict tracking, patient consent, and quality control testing. Sanjay simply bypassed the tracking, bypassed the consent, and skipped the quality tests. He also began reusing bloodlines, which were never approved for reprocessing under any circumstance, by running them through a saline flush and repackaging them in unmarked bags. By the end of 2020, according to internal spreadsheets found on the seized USB, roughly 28% of the center's disposable supplies were being reused across patients. By mid-2021, that figure had climbed to 41%. By early 2022, it exceeded 50%. The savings did not reduce the billing. Every treatment continued to be billed as if all supplies were new. The difference, meaning the money Sanjay was not spending on supplies, but was being paid for anyway, moved through the center's operating account and, according to a forensic accounting affidavit filed later, into 3 separate mechanisms. Legitimate performance bonuses from Meridian based on inflated margin reports, personal expense reimbursements through the center's corporate card, and a consulting services LLC registered in Sanjay's wife's maiden name. His performance bonus in 2020 was $38,000. In 2021, $49,000. In 2022, $61,000. His base salary rose to $168,000. He bought a new car in the spring of 2022, a black Lexus RX 350, paid for in cash. He and Priya took the boys to Orlando that summer, staying at the Four Seasons. He paid off the last $22,000 of his father's medical bills. He also, according to text messages recovered from his phone, began receiving pointed questions from a senior nurse named Corinne Bellamy. Corinne Bellamy, 44 years old, 22 years in dialysis nursing, had transferred to the Brazos Bend Center from a Fresenius facility in Katy in April of 2022. Within her first 3 weeks, she noticed things. Dialyzers with unfamiliar patient stickers scratched off, bloodline bags with no seal, a reprocessing machine running at odd hours, a charge nurse who avoided her questions. She began keeping notes. We're heading into the moment this whole thing came apart. If you've made it this far, you already know this channel is different. Subscribe if you want to see how the system actually handles cases like this, because you are about to see exactly how many warning signs it took before anyone said the word investigation. The catalyst was a woman named Ruth Ellen Prescott. Ruth Prescott, 68 years old, a retired postal clerk from Missouri City, had been on hemodialysis at the Brazos Bend Center for 4 years. She was a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday patient, first shift, chair number 7. She was diabetic, hypertensive, and according to her daughter Camille, the kind of woman who baked pralines for the technicians at Christmas and knew every one of them by their children's names. On the morning of Saturday, September the 10th, 2022, Ruth Prescott went in for her regular treatment. She left the center at 8:40 a.m., feeling, in her words to her daughter over the phone that afternoon, a little more tired than usual. By 10 p.m., she was shivering. By midnight, she had a temperature of 103.4. Camille drove her to the emergency room at Memorial Hermann Sugarland, where blood cultures were drawn at 1:20 a.m. Within 72 hours, the cultures grew Serratia marcescens, a gram-negative bacterium associated with contaminated medical equipment and rare in community-acquired infections. Ruth Prescott survived. Barely. She spent 19 days in the hospital, 11 of them in the ICU, and lost the use of her dialysis access site permanently, requiring surgical placement of a new catheter in her chest. She was not the only one. Between August and October of 2022, 7 other patients from the Brazos Bend Dialysis Center presented to area emergency rooms with bloodstream infections. 4 of the 7 grew Serratia, 2 grew Pseudomonas, 1 grew a rare strain of Enterobacter cloacae. Under normal circumstances at a facility of this size, the expected annual rate of dialysis-associated bloodstream infections was 2, perhaps 3. In an 8-week period, Brazos Bend had produced 8. The infections did not cluster by chair. They did not cluster by shift. They did not cluster by nurse. But when Fort Bend County's public health epidemiologist, a woman named Dr. Yolanda Escobar, ran the cases against the center's treatment schedule, one variable correlated with statistical significance. Every infected patient had been treated in the 2-hour window immediately following a specific reprocessing machine cycle. Dr. Escobar filed a Class 1 notification with the Texas Department of State Health Services on October the 17th, 2022. 2 days later, on the 19th, Corinne Bellamy, the nurse who had been keeping notes for 6 months, walked into the FBI's Houston field office on Justice Park Drive, sat down with Special Agent Marcus Whitfield, and handed him a manila folder containing 42 pages of dated observations, 3 photographs of relabeled dialyzers, and a written statement. The photographs showed, unmistakably, single-use cartridges with 2 different patient names written in Sharpie on the label. One crossed out, one still legible. Sanjay Rao's federal investigation began that afternoon. The investigation, codenamed Operation Riverstone by the FBI's Houston Healthcare Fraud Squad, ran for 8 months before an arrest was made. The first phase was quiet. Agents did not enter the center. They did not interview Sanjay. Instead, they built the paper case. Subpoenas went to Medline Renal for the center's supply order history over the previous 3 years. Subpoenas went to Meridian Renal Partners for the internal billing and margin reports. Subpoenas went to Medicare's contractor for the claims data. Subpoenas went to 3 banks, the IRS, and the Texas Secretary of State for the corporate filings of the LLC in Priya Rao's maiden name. The numbers, cross-referenced, were unambiguous. Between January of 2020 and October of 2022, the Brazos Bend Dialysis Center had billed Medicare and private insurers for 84,216 new dialyzers. It had, over the same period, purchased 49,183. The gap, meaning 35,033 dialyzers billed but never bought, represented, at the center's average bundled reimbursement rate, an estimated $1.9 million in fraudulent claims. The bloodline discrepancy was smaller in unit count, but similar in percentage. So were the transducer protectors. So were the priming saline bags. The Consulting Services LLC in Priya's maiden name had received, over 18 months, $416,000 in payments from an entity called Coastal Health Advisory Group, which investigators would eventually establish was a shell company controlled by Sanjay through a Nevada-registered agent. Coastal Health Advisory Group did not appear to provide any services. It received wire transfers from the Brazos Bend Center's operating account. It transferred those funds to Priya's LLC. From there, they went, in smaller increments, to the Rao family's joint checking account, to a 5-29 college savings plan for the boys, and to a brokerage account holding roughly $280,000 in index funds. The second phase of the investigation was the wire. In February of 2023, Corinne Bellamy, who had continued working at the center as an informant with FBI knowledge, was equipped with a covert audio recorder and told to raise a specific supply concern with Sanjay in his office. The transcript, later filed as an exhibit in the criminal complaint, contained the following exchange. Bellamy, February 14th, 2023, 3:47 p.m. Mr. Rao, I've been looking at the dialyzer counts against the schedule, and the numbers don't match. We're running 72 treatments a day, but we're only receiving 48 new units. Rao. Corinne, we run a very efficient reprocessing program here. That's what the machine is for. Bellamy. But reprocessing is patient-specific. You can't reprocess one patient's dialyzer for another patient. That's a blood-borne pathogen. Rao. Corinne, listen to me. Everything we do here is approved. Everything is documented. If you have concerns about the paperwork, I'll show you the paperwork. But I need you to understand that some of this is above your pay grade. Bellamy. Above my pay grade. Rao. Yes, it is. Special Agent Whitfield had what he needed. The text message evidence was pulled from Sanjay's iCloud backup, obtained under a Title III warrant executed on the 3rd of April, 2023. Among the recovered messages was a thread with the center's supply technician, a man named Devin Ochoa, dated the 12th of September, 2022, 2 days after Ruth Prescott's admission to Memorial Hermann. Rao, September 12th, 2022, 6:14 a.m. How many R3 units do we have available for first shift? Ochoa. 16 good, 4 questionable. Rao. Run the questionables. Chair 7, Chair 14, Chair 18, Chair 22. Do not label with prior patient. Ochoa. Sanjay, these are the ones I flagged last week. Rao. Run them. Chair 7 was Ruth Prescott's chair. The forensic team assembled the last piece in May of 2023. They obtained, under seal, a sample set of 11 used dialyzers pulled from the center's disposal storage, a locked room to which only Sanjay had the key, and sent them to the CDC's laboratory in Atlanta. 9 of the 11 contained residual biological material, consistent with reuse. 4 of them cultured live bacterial colonies. 3 matched, at the strain level, the Serratia marcescens isolated from Ruth Prescott's bloodstream. The federal grand jury for the Southern District of Texas returned a sealed indictment on the 12th of June, 2023. The arrest was scheduled for the following Tuesday morning. At 6:42 a.m. on Tuesday, June the 20th, 2023, Sanjay Vikram Rao pulled his black Lexus into the reserved director's parking space at the Brazos Bend Dialysis Center. He wore a light blue button-down shirt, dark khaki pants, and brown leather loafers. He carried a leather laptop bag over his right shoulder and a stainless steel coffee tumbler in his left hand. First shift had already started 14 minutes earlier. 3 unmarked FBI vehicles were already in the lot. 2 agents were positioned at the front entrance. 2 more were inside, at the reception desk, presenting a search warrant to the confused morning receptionist. Special Agent Marcus Whitfield and a second agent, Special Agent Elena Ramirez, stood between Sanjay's car and the door. Sanjay stopped walking. The body cam footage, later released in part through Discovery, captured the following exchange. Whitfield. Mr. Rao, Sanjay Rao? Rao. Yes, can I help you? Whitfield. Sir, I'm Special Agent Marcus Whitfield with the FBI. This is Special Agent Ramirez. We have a warrant for your arrest. Please set the bag down and put your hands where I can see them. Rao. What is this about? There's been some kind of... Whitfield. Sir, the bag on the ground. Hands out to your sides. Rao. I run a healthcare facility. There are patients inside right now. Please, can we... Whitfield. Mr. Rao, put the bag down. The bag hit the pavement. The tumbler followed a second later, coffee spilling in a dark half circle around his loafers. Rao. This is a mistake. I don't understand what am I being charged with? Whitfield. Sir, you're being charged with healthcare fraud, adulteration of a medical device, and reckless endangerment. There's a sealed indictment. You'll hear the specifics at your initial appearance. Rao. Adulteration? I've never. I run this center by the book. Everything we do is documented. Everything is approved. You need to, Whitfield. Sir, turn around. Hands behind your back. Rao. Corinne. This is Corinne, isn't it? She's been... Whitfield. Sir, turn around. He turned around. Agent Ramirez cuffed him. His hands, according to the report, were shaking. Inside the center, first shift patients were being pulled from their machines by FBI agents in blue windbreakers. 24 people in reclining chairs, tubing still running, being told that their treatment was being terminated and that their center was now a federal crime scene. Ruth Prescott's daughter, Camille, received a phone call from the FBI's victim witness coordinator at 7:08 a.m. in her kitchen in Missouri City while she was pouring cereal for her son. She sat down on the tile floor and did not get up for a long time. Sanjay Rao asked, in the back of the FBI transport vehicle, one question. According to the agent's report, he asked whether he was going to be able to call his wife. Then he did not speak again for the length of the drive to the federal courthouse on Rusk Street in downtown Houston. The initial appearance was held that same afternoon at 2:30 p.m. before United States Magistrate Judge Helena Vargas in courtroom 704 of the Bob Casey Federal Courthouse. The indictment, unsealed at the hearing, contained 31 federal counts, 12 counts of healthcare fraud under 18 U.S.C., paragraph 1347, one for each quarterly billing cycle in which the fraudulent claims had been submitted, 9 counts of adulteration of a medical device under 21 U.S.C., paragraph 331 and paragraph 333, one for each of the reused dialyzer categories charged, 6 counts of wire fraud under 18 U.S.C., paragraph 1343, tied to specific electronic transfers from the shell company, 2 counts of aggravated identity theft, and 2 counts, the ones that made every reporter in the gallery lean forward, of reckless endangerment charged under a novel federal theory, tied to specific patients whose infections had been traced by DNA to reprocessed equipment. The government's motion for pretrial detention was filed the following morning. Assistant United States Attorney Denise Kwan argued that Sanjay Rao posed both a flight risk because he held an Indian passport, still had family in Hyderabad, and had transferred substantial assets offshore in the 6 months preceding indictment, and a danger to the community, given the ongoing risk that unindicted co-conspirators or additional victims might yet come forward. His defense attorney, a well-known Houston white-collar litigator named Peter Klingenschmidt, argued for release on a $2 million bond secured by the family home. He pointed to Sanjay's clean criminal record, his 2 children, his elderly mother in Sugar Land, and his willingness to surrender travel documents. Magistrate Judge Vargas took the arguments under advisement for 48 hours. On Thursday morning, she denied bail. Her ruling, read from the bench, ran 14 minutes. The portion the local news carried that evening included the following passage. The defendant is charged with a crime that was not a single act. It was a business model. It was, according to the government's proffer, a sustained decision made every single working day for nearly 3 years to substitute the physical safety of some of the most medically vulnerable people in this district for a set of financial margins. The court has considered the defendant's family, his ties, his record. The court has considered them carefully, but the court cannot ignore that the evidence proffered describes not a lapse in judgment, but a system, and a person capable of operating that system for that long against those victims presents a risk this court is not prepared to underwrite. Detention is ordered pending trial. Sanjay Rao was remanded to the custody of the U.S. Marshals Service and transported to the Federal Detention Center at Houston, a 9-story concrete facility on Emancipation Avenue, where he was assigned to Housing Unit 7 North. Ruth Ellen Prescott delivered her victim statement, not at trial, which had not yet begun, but at a separate detention review hearing 3 months later, after her attorneys petitioned to be heard. She was 68 years old, walked with a cane, and read from 3 sheets of yellow legal paper. The relevant portion. Mr. Rao, I sat in your chair, number 7, every Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday morning for 4 years. I brought pralines at Christmas. I asked about your boys. I trusted you with the machine that kept me alive. and you did not trust me back. You did not think I was worth the price of a piece of plastic tubing. I want you to sit with that for a very long time. The case remains pending. Federal prosecutors have named 47 affected patients in the current indictment and estimate the final victim count will exceed 200. Meridian Renal Partners has suspended operations at the Brazos Bend Dialysis Center indefinitely. Corinne Bellamy has filed a False Claims Act qui tam suit that, if it succeeds, will award her a percentage of any government recovery. Sanjay Rao sits in Unit 7 North, awaiting trial. His father died in October. He was not permitted to attend the funeral. This case was chilling. But the case on the right-hand side is the one that made me sit down halfway through and stop reading. Click it now.